Hey everybody, this is the grade 11 theory lesson, unit 3B, and today's topic is triad inversions, and we're going to learn about figured bass notation. So in the previous lesson we learned about triads, the different variations that exist, major, minor, diminished, and augmented triads, and today we're going to look at the inversions of what those triads can also be. So not always in root position. So triads can be rearranged and written with any of the three pitches as the lowest pitch, or as it is sometimes referred to in the bass voice. So the important thing to note is that the pitches aren't changing, but it's just the order that's changing. So root position triads are said to be in root position when the root of the triad is the lowest pitch, or it's in the bass voice. A first inversion triad will have been said to be in first inversion when the third of the triad is the lowest pitch, or it's in the bass voice. And second inversion is when we've got the fifth in the bass voice, and that's basically the extent of the variations we can have with triads. So some examples in your theory guide. So I've drawn the first example that's using C major, the C major triad and its different permutations on the board in front of us. So we're going to go through what's taking place here. So in our first lesson in 3A we talked about the concept that all triads contain the root, the third, and the fifth. And so you can see here in root position, we've still maintained that. We still have our root note as C, our third is an E, and our fifth as being a G. And again, these are all diatonic from the key of C major. So when it comes to labeling these triads, again, this is C major, and we're just going to call this one root position for now. Because again, the C, the root note of the triad is in the bass voice, and we have our stacked thirds on top of that, remember from our previous lesson. A major third and a minor third being the pattern for, in this case, all of the examples will have that taking place. So, first inversion. We say in first inversion, again, the third is in the bass voice. So all we've done is we've taken this root note C and we've drawn it up the octave. So it was down here, right? And so now it's above. So it's still C major. We still have the three same notes. We haven't changed the notes. The order has changed, but the overall flavor of the chord is still major. So this is actually going to be in what we would call first inversion, because the third of the triad is now the bass note. If we were to do the same thing again, so we take our third and bring that one up the octave, what we're being left with is a C major triad, and this time we have it in second inversion. So again, the notes themselves aren't changing. All that's changing is the order in which they're drawn on the staff. And your guide goes through a couple other examples. Again, they're not always major triads. Sometimes we're dealing augmented, diminished, minor. It doesn't matter. The same rules apply, and the same process can be at play. So the concept of figured bass notation. So rather than every time identifying triads and writing out first inversion, second inversion, root position, a notational shorthand was developed during the Baroque period to simplify this need of writing out the entire chord. So only the bass voice needed to be written. So way back in the day, depending on the key you're in and you're asked to write the triad, you might omit a few notes and just have a particular note being voiced. So shorthand was based on the interval relation of the different triad pitches when they were in their different inversions. So these numbers were then used to tell the performer what the chord tones above the bass voice were. So root position, you'll see it in your guide as we have root, and we've also got this. And what those two numbers are referring to, remember from yesterday when we were identifying our triads and we said, okay, well, we need a root, we need a third, and we need a fifth. If you notice, the third and the fifth in relation to the root, it's the same down here. So what this is referring to is that, root's underneath, obviously, and if you count up a third, you'll get to the E, and then if you count root to the fifth, you'll get a G. So that's actually just illustrating, again, those numbers are corresponding to the position of the other notes within the triad above the root note. The nice thing about the figured bass is that we actually don't even need to use any of that. We can just simply go, well, simplified everything, and we can just call this triad, it's a C major triad, and we don't need to worry about the 5 over the 3. We'll see in just a moment, because again, if that's all the information we've been given, we can make the assumption that we're actually in root position. So when we're looking at a triad that has the third as the base voice, we call that our first inversion. And if we look at your guide, we've got it written like this. And what that's referring to is, again, the distance between these pitches. Now, the intervals themselves, we're not going to worry about if it's major, if it's minor. For now, we're just simply looking at the numbers. And just to simplify this, we're just, again, it's the distance between what is now the bass voice, in this case the third of the chord. The distance from an E to a G is a third. Yes, it is a minor third, but we're just concerned with the number for now. And the distance from an E to a C is a sixth. And yes, that is a minor sixth. Doesn't change the chord. It's still C major. It's just the inversion. So these numbers, again, are correlating to what's taking place with the intervals themselves when we rearrange the triad. Normally, and again, we want to simplify this even further. So if I have down here figured bass, and we'll go through each of these, but figured bass, this one would just simply be C major. In first inversion, we would just simply do that with the 6. We don't actually need the 3. It's redundant because it's here and it isn't here. Simpler, we don't have to have 5 over 3 again. That's implying its first or its root position. 6 with the distance again, the third. We don't even need that information. We can simplify it even further and just call C6, which means hey, we're in first inversion. And second inversion, if you notice the distance, so if we're looking at our numbers again, so going from G to a C, that's the distance of a fourth. And then the distance from a G to an E is an interval of a 6. So this one is actually 6 over 4. So when we are identifying, now because we already have, again, the number 6 here, and these numbers are different, we do actually need to use both of those numbers when we're using figured bass. And you often see it written like that. Again, we need to do this to distinguish it from first inversion. We don't have to worry about root, because again, that's taken care of with these numbers. We can simplify. So the figured bass, again, it's a way of simplifying the notation for what's taking place. That is basically it with figured bass notation for triads. So again, root position has the third and the fifth above the root. First inversion, the third is now in the bass voice. And second inversion, the fifth is now the bass voice note. And you can see again, those numbers correspond to how the intervals have been altered. Again, the flavor or the overall sound of the triad in this case is still C major. All we're doing is moving various notes around. In your learning guide, you're asked to write the following triads using figured bass notation and MuseScore for this assignment. You've got a whole bunch of different triads that have been listed. We'll do one example. Let's do one together. Just to go through this. So I'm just going to pick one, or maybe two. We'll do these with some in the bass clef, because that's good practice as well. So let's do A sharp minor, and that's in second inversion. So first thing we need to do is determine what's the key signature of A sharp minor. What are the 3 notes that we need in A sharp minor? We can just simply list these out, and then we can put those into the inversion afterwards. So A sharp minor, we know that we're dealing with all of the notes in A sharp minor are sharp. So the 3 notes that we need, well, we need an A sharp, we need a C sharp, and we need an E sharp. Those are the 3 notes that we need. So root, third, and fifth. And so we know, actually maybe I'll redraw it. This might actually be a little bit better if I do it with this. A sharp, C sharp, E sharp, and then root, third, and fifth. So that's currently in root position, the way I've done it. We don't want that though. We do want second inversion. So we do need the bass note to be the fifth of the chord, or the triad. In this case, it's the E sharp, and then everything else we can simply draw above that. So 2 ways to think about it. Again, you can imagine, okay, we'll bring the E sharp down an octave. That's probably the simplest thing to do. So, right, we can put our E sharp here. There's our A sharp, and there's our C sharp in second inversion. And that's it. So there's an A sharp minor triad in second inversion. We'll do one more. We'll do, let's do D flat diminished. So D flat diminished, what are the notes that exist for that triad? So, well, we know that we need a root, we need a third, and our fifth. Our root note is D flat. We know that from recalling from lesson 3A, the sequence of intervals or the thirds for a diminished triad are going to be a minor third and a minor third. So a minor third above a D flat, we actually need to have as an F flat, and a diminished fifth above a D flat, we actually need to have an A double flat. Because again, in the key of, or a minor third above an F flat, remember enharmonically it's an F. Maybe for simplicity's sake, let's just ignore the F flat itself. What's a minor third above an F? An A flat, and then we need, okay, so now we have an F flat, so we'll have to lower that A flat to make it an A double flat. Now, the second thing we need to do is determine what inversion we're in. Well, we aren't given any, we don't see any numbers that follow what type of triad we're dealing with, so we are in root position. So, really all we need to do and that's it. So there's D flat diminished in root position. So for these questions in your guide, if you can fill in using MuseScore, go through each of those and label them. So underneath, just like what you're seeing on the board, I know I'm doing it on the chalkboard. If you can do the same in MuseScore, and the additional benefit is that you can also hear these triads taking place as well. That's it, everybody. Thanks for watching.